The South African government says that it has tried its best in mitigating the effects of economic challenges on the country's most vulnerable citizens. The country is still recovering, though, from the serious concerns and economic damage caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Government also saying through its presidential employment stimulus, over 700,000 jobs were created and over 40,000 others retained. There's also a serious debate about whether initiatives such as the basic income grants would be the sustainable solution. Human Settlements Minister Mmamoloko Kubayi, who also leads the economic sector investment, employment and infrastructure development cluster, joins us for this conversation. Thank you so much for your time, Minister.
Good morning, and good morning to your viewers.
I think let's start with one of the biggest risks to the South African economy when we're talking about some progress that has been seen in economic activity in South Africa attributed to the recovery plan. We must also speak about the current impact of load shedding, as that's a setback for not only South African citizens but business as well as sentiment.
No, definitely. We do acknowledge that in the report. And that's why we're saying the work of the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan will be successful, anchored and supported by the Electricity Crisis Committee, Energy Crisis Committee. You'd remember that the President established this committee, and their work is anchored around ensuring that there's security of supply, because when you look at the ERRP, you see that we focus more around the generation. So long-term plans to ensure that we could be able to cap. So whatever you see as the plans to say we want to build the following power plants and also generation capacity, that in terms of lead time, it's between almost from 18 months and more. And that's why you can't see the impact immediately into the economy. And that's why we are raising the issue that the energy crisis or the energy challenges that we have of load shedding, yes, do continue to impact, and that's why the security of supply is critical. The maintenance of the plants remains, and the issue around energy availability within the country remains an issue that we should be able to pay attention to. But we also flag in that there were initiatives that could have helped us in terms of short-term mechanisms, such as those which were taken to court. Whether you talk about the car power shift, you talk about, those are what could have actually as well supported us in a short-term mechanism. And one of the things that we are raising within the economic cluster is that how do we find mechanism to deal with issues that are more in terms of securing the economy, also but protecting or still respecting the issues around the courts. So it's one of the things that we are trying to find a balance in terms of issues, but consultation will continue with various stakeholders so that we do not find ourselves in the future where we have challenges, but we have South African citizens that take us to court.
Much of the energy supply challenges in South Africa have also been attributed to a continued slow pace in economic growth, as well as a hindrance on job creation. But another matter, Minister, is that of investor attractiveness. It's been bandied about recently that no investor wants to put their money in a country where energy supply is not guaranteed. How much of an accelerated pace is government willing to move on this? We do understand that there are already deliberations around ensuring that there are private-public partnerships in making sure that we expand on the service offerings when it comes to electricity.
Look, the issue around investor confidence and investor attractability, it's in different folds. So energy would be one of them. And quite a number of issues, for example, the ease of doing business would be others. So I don't think that we should only focus on energy reliability as one of the areas that attracts investment. Then we'll have a problem later when we have sorted out the issue of energy, and then people start asking us, but where are the investors? We do see a lot of investors. For example, the president went and opened a plant in KZN. That is an international investor. They pledged, I think it was this week with Minister Patel, they pledged during one of the investor conferences to say we'll build this plant, we'll invest in the country, and they've done that. So there are quite a number of issues that affect us in terms of various areas. You'd see that there was an investment plan in the city of Cape Town, which was eventually taken to court because of the land issue in terms of redistribution of land in that area. so the investment was not able to take place. So that's what I'm saying. When we look at the issue of investment, we should not have a problem of focusing on one area. Another issue that we are paying attention to as the economic cluster is also the issues around the security of the economy. For example, the issues around vandalism, the issues are around the issues of construction mafias. We spoke to them, for example. We spoke to those, for example, where we say there are two folds. We would want to remove the issue around where genuine small businesses are outcrying that big companies come in, bring in even SMMEs from outside where they are operating, whereas they should be able to take in, as part of local economic development, the small businesses in this area. And one of the issues we've taken a decision is that we'll consistently have social facilitation in those communities so that that is understandable, but isolate the criminal elements so that law enforcement agencies can deal with it. So to me, it's important for us not to focus on one area, while we acknowledging that the energy issue remains a problem for us, and therefore once we resolve it, it will also stimulate confidence in the communities, especially business, local and international investors.
Let's move on to another matter that is top on the agenda when it comes to social discourse currently, is a call for the permanency of that the relief fund for those who are unemployed. At the time it was called the distress grant, and there are also talks on the side of government of at some point ensuring that there is that benefit to the most vulnerable in South Africa, given the high unemployment rate. How far is that conversation and terminology that may be used as we head towards the medium-term budget policy statement? Many of us as a country are looking to what the finance minister may or may not say about that particular provision.
Look, conversations are still going on the base, and Minister Kodongwane, as he addresses, he will possibly address that. I'm not so sure at this point, and I don't want to be preempting his speech. But conversations that we have, one is that there is an argument to say this intervention assisted families to avoid them to living below poverty lines. Secondly, but again, on the other hand, it's the discussions around affordability of it. And also the issue around conversations where people will say it should never be just a freebie. If we are to do this, then can it have conditions? Either you black people who are on it into, for example, skills development facilities and all those things. So it's an ongoing conversation based on affordability, but also looking at what the country can do, but also understanding that while we take lessons learned from COVID-19 interventions, is that we've seen its impact in the families.
Minister, speaking of a continuation, when we look at what needs to be done as a mitigator of economic effects, putting pressure on South Africans really from the economic recovery plan, I'm interested in finding out if there are going to be tweaks as we face far different challenges on the economy currently compared to where we were with COVID-19. There's rising inflation, the rising cost of living. There's also, beds of the interest rate hike cycle that's going to continue. So consumers are even in a far worse position than we were during the times of COVID-19. It adds on to the concerns around South Africa's economic growth to create participation that is going to be progressive for a South African consumer.
Look, the issue around going forward, yes, we are reviewing and bringing in more focus areas. For example, going forward, there are areas that we'll look into more intense in the SMME space. And also we've added the issue of informal sector. We've seen how many countries on the continent have been able to have a thriving sector in terms of informal economy, looking at the regulatory environment around that, the support that is available. And then we're also looking at the issue of for example, utilizing digital technologies to be able to assist us in the digital economy, but also alternative mechanism in terms of the fourth industrial revolution. Also, the issues around expanding in the manufacturing space, around the energy, for example, electric cars, hydrogen space, battery space, to be able to create new economies and new industries as we move forward. So there are quite a number of areas, and there will be those that we still support, we continue. For example, the intensification of work around localization, manufacturing and industrialization. Will continue with tourism as one of the areas, because we do believe it's mass employment area. We'll continue with the green economy as well. Within that area, there's still opportunities for us. So there's quite a number of areas. We'll pay attention, for example, again, intensively in removing the constraints around what we call the infrastructure side, the work that is being done by Dr. Ramokgopa, so that we support, but more bringing as well into the focus the work that is being done by municipalities to support the economy will be very critical as we move forward, because we're finding quite a lot of feedback around the municipal constraints or regulatory and approvals that needs to be done by municipalities taking too long, and also within the municipalities building capacity to be able to support the growth of the economy.
Lastly, Minister Kubayi, and briefly, how would you respond to some quarters of the South African Republic basically not having confidence in the current government to fast-track the turnaround that is needed in the economy? The triple challenges remain, and we find ourselves in a position and dispensation where economic growth is really not seen at a practical level.
Look, I think it's correct for people to do an evaluation, but we need to take a step back and understand what this administration of President Ramaphosa faced and what this ERRP intended to do and what we have been able to achieve. Firstly is that when this administration was in, we were in 2019. 2020 we started being hit by COVID-19, and the economy was shut down. As we looked at that, as we started working around the clock to ensure that we can protect lives and livelihood. By the way, if we look back from lockdown level 5 and level 4, which was necessary because we needed to protect lives, we immediately adopted the strategy to say we must protect lives and livelihoods. We cushioned households in terms of this income that we talked about, in terms of providing support for households with that grant, COVID-19 grant for families. We also cushioned businesses by providing support to businesses in terms of business support in the relief funds, but also again, businesses, if you talk to many small businesses, will tell you that they are existing today because government was able to relieve the burden of payment to their employees, and they could take whatever savings that they had to be able to focus on protecting their companies, and that's why they exist today. So that's one of the things that people don't take into consideration, that when we look at how government really has been doing, you'd see that we've really done quite well compared to many countries. You look at our inflation in the country compared to many countries, they're sitting at 10% in terms of their inflation. We're sitting below as a developing country.
We are sitting at 9.1%, Minister.
9.1 now. That's what I'm saying. We're sitting at below. But if you look at the country, Tumisang, compared to where others are and what their economies have been and what their capabilities, we are not far worse off in terms of our interventions. We have we had the floods, the natural disasters that affected the value chain. Our ports were affected, the road infrastructure and rail network was affected. Those are the arteries of the economy that assist us to move goods and people, which makes it difficult for economy to function. We have the external shocks. The Ukraine and Russia conflict continues to affect us, impact negatively on us, because we are not an oil producing country. That's why our oil prices went up. Despite that, the government made intervention to cushion the country in terms of intervention around the fuel prices. Those are direct interventions by government, which actually made us not worse off and put us in a better position. When you look today in terms of the economy, you are seeing quite a lot of recovery. I was talking to somebody this week who was preparing for a birthday and can't have even a venue in Gauteng to organize. That tells you that there is a recovery of the tourism sector. These are deliberate interventions by government. You've seen some of the airlines returning in the country, which were not here during COVID and have left before COVID.
But SA Express liquidated, unfortunately, and that is a state asset. We'll have to leave it there, but thank you so much for giving us your time as always. That is Minister Mmamoloko Kubayi talking to us this morning about the economic recovery plan, progress made there, but essentially much more work is needed. That's it for now.